Hello. It's been a very interesting last couple of days. I think I can technically call it a success, and Jugglebot has technically thrown a ball, but I don't feel it's as legitimate enough of a throw to tick that goal off of my list. So, but it was good. I got a lot of useful information that I did not have before, and this is going to allow me to improve the hand in pretty meaningful ways. So it was not a total loss, I think. So let's get straight into it. The first thing that I had to do was to wire up the new motor and driver. That actually worked out relatively well. It wasn't too eventful. I am very glad that I changed my design from needing 3 motors for the hand down to just needing 1 motor, because it turns out there actually would not have been enough pins on the Teensy to control 3 more motors. As it is now, I have space enough for 1 more motor. So hopefully I don't need another one, but in case I do, I've got space for just 1 more. Yeah, it's a little bit messy in there now. It started off all nice and neat, but now because I've had to add this 7th thing, it's like screwed up all my symmetry and everything's gone a little bit messy, but it works, so that's fine. Yeah, so that was not too tricky. It's just a little bit time consuming. The next thing was that I wanted to change the way that the strings routed around the hand. So previously I had the strings going through little eye hooks, and the string was rubbing quite a lot on that point, and it was really, really wearing down the strings. So I wanted to simplify things a little bit, and I realized that I can just cut a channel straight into the 3D printed part. Like, not even cut, I can have a hole in the printed part and just guide the string through that. And that seems to be working a lot better. I have not run it for as many iterations as I ran the one with the eye hooks, so maybe things will change as I run it more, but it's pretty fine right now. And I think it also looks nicer. So there's that. And the other big thing that I changed was to change the way that I have routed the strings through these pulleys at the top. The way that I did it before was that I had the string clamped between the 2 halves of the pulley, and it was all glued shut so that I had no way of adjusting the length of the string. I guess I might have been able to tie knots in it, but because this has to be spooling up over the pulley, that probably wouldn't work very well. And yeah, so it was very much a one size has to be correct sort of thing. And yeah, it was not ideal. So what I've got this time, which I think is a lot better, is the 2 halves are just held together with bolts, and I can just pass the strings through the two, like between the 2 printed parts, and then tighten the bolts. And then if I want to adjust the length, I can just loosen the bolts by a little bit, pull the string through just by a little bit, and then tighten the bolts back up again to clamp it shut. So you'll see now I've got a whole bunch of strings dangling out the top of them, and that's just to give me a little bit of adaptability to change the length of the strings. So, and that's worked pretty well. I'm pretty happy with how that changed. And that was about it. So with those changes done, I was ready to give it all a test. Alrighty, so today should be a pretty exciting day. Yesterday I have done all the wiring for the new motor, so the motor that will control the hand, and it's all working. I've tested it. I can actually control it, which is nice. Yeah, so today I'm going to see if I can get a ball to throw. I've decided to simplify things a little bit so that there are really ultimately like 3 ways that I can throw one ball in varying degrees of goodness as I see it. The first way is to just have the hand part throw the ball so the legs don't move at all, which is obviously not what would actually happen when it's juggling, but is a necessary step for Jugglebot to be able to juggle properly. And then the next step is to throw a ball straight up with the legs contributing to some of that motion. So the legs will move up and the hand will throw at the same time, requiring a bit of coordination. And then the third step is to throw a ball in an arc so that I could actually have Jugglebot do more than one ball at a time. Because if it's only throwing straight up and down, there's not a whole lot of space in a line for multiple balls to be following different paths. So I need Jugglebot to be able to move to a certain spot, throw the ball in a certain way, and then move to a different spot afterwards. So a good general way for me to do that is to have Jugglebot throw the ball in an arc, as I do when I'm doing 2 balls in one hand. There is another way to do this where I can have multiple balls going straight up and down next to each other. And that's an option as well. But I think once I can get the ball to throw in an arc, that should be fine, because Once I can get the ball to throw in an arc, that means that I can control Jugglebot to move to a certain spot and throw the ball in a very specific way. And the way that that is thrown shouldn't really matter that much. So I think once I can get that arc going, it should be fine. My goal for today is just to get the hand to throw. Honestly, I think that this should only take like an hour or so tops, but I don't want to count my chickens before they hatch. So I've planned for it to take the whole day, and then I want to edit this video and publish this. So fingers crossed, hopefully I can do that all today. And then, yeah, the next step is to get the motors to contribute as well, which, yeah, I don't think it should be too tricky, but I want to just one thing at a time. All right, so let's get into it. So the very first thing that I had to do was to put Jugglebot back on top of its electronics box, because I had to open up the box to get all of the new wiring and everything in for the new motor. And so I had to put everything back together again. And that involved tightening up all of these 12 screws that attaches the lid to the base, which is quite tedious. I really need to get myself one of those electric screwdriver things. That would really help quite a lot, but one day. And then had to put Jugglebot on top of the base. And it's quite heavy, so that was a little bit tricky, but I got there in the end. And that sheet is there, by the way, because I have to protect Jugglebot from our cats overnight, so they don't eat all the strings that are in there. And I'm surprised that it's actually worked so far. I would have thought the cats would have gotten in underneath, but they haven't so far. I did need to bolt down this wire here because it was getting a little bit in the way of the strings, so I just had to get a little cable clip thing and hold that wire down. So the first test is always to just make sure the motor works by itself without attaching anything else, because I do not want to accidentally destroy the hand. So I just had a little piece of masking tape to see if the motor was turning, and just making sure that I could control it the way that I thought I could. Once that was confirmed, I just had to put the pulley on that attached the string to the hand, and just make sure all the measurements were correct, so that it wasn't overrunning and pulling too far, nor underrunning and not pulling far enough. So I think that testing is looking pretty good. Let's give it a go with the ball. See what happens. I don't think it's going to throw up. It's definitely not going to throw up straight, because I'm having problems with the strings not being perfectly tightened. I can adjust it with the way that I've got it right now, but it's a little bit tedious to do that. So maybe let's see what happens when I throw a ball. If it looks promising, then I'll go through the effort to readjust it to try to make it throw straight, and then I can see if I can time it so that I can get it to go up and then catch it again, which would be pretty cool. Yeah, let's just see what happens. I also don't really know what to expect in terms of how high this is going to throw. So let's just try that. Jugglebot's first throw ever. Let's see what happens. Interesting. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if you can see that, but the misalignment of the strings is causing it to not travel smoothly. So if you see, so you can see here the extreme tilt of that cup part of the hand, and that's really not good. You can see that the constant force springs aren't unwinding smoothly, and that's causing a lot of problems. So I need to straighten up the strings there a bit and make sure that they're all the same length, because you can see that one on the right is pulling a lot earlier than the other two. So that's not okay. So I spent a little bit of time readjusting these lengths. So loosening up the bolts at the top, pulling the string through a little bit, and then trying to get it correct, as close as I could at least. And this took a little bit of time, so I'll spare you all the details, but eventually I could get it sort of straight. Okay. That is looking a lot better. Let's see if we can throw. Take two. That is very odd. I don't know why that's getting jammed. So I've changed things around a little bit. So now the string is not wrapped around the pulley, but is instead wrapped directly around the motor shaft. So it means I'm going to have to make it spin a lot more, like many more times, but it will mean that it will need a lot less force to throw. So let's see, I'm just going to have to experiment a bit to get the number of steps correct so that it throws, so that it doesn't go too far. And then let's see if this will help. Let's make it go really slow for now. Let's give it a go at a higher speed. I thought that this pattern of moving was very odd. You can see that it's sort of throwing the ball and then the hand itself is getting sort of stuck, and then the ball is continuing and then the hand is catching up and catching the ball again. So sort of throwing and then catching the ball before it even reaches the top of the path. I don't really know what's causing that. It's very odd. So I was just stuffing around with that for a little while, and after testing and testing and testing, eventually I managed to get it to the point where it actually threw sort of well. So you've seen how it went, and now let's go through what I think some of the main problems are that I hope to fix for the next iteration of the hand. The first and perhaps most significant problem is that the lengths of the strings that go down to the cup part, the hand, are not all the same length. And despite my best attempts at adjusting the length of that string with the clamping method that I described before, I can't get them all to be exactly the same. This is probably not terribly surprising. I definitely should have been able to see this coming, and sort of did, but I didn't think it would be that big of an issue. But it is. So I really need to figure out some way to get those strings to all be exactly the same length. I have some ideas on how I'm going to fix that, but before I get into that, I want to go through another problem that I'm having with the strings, which is that on the underside of the hand part, the strings keep falling off of the pulley and going next to it, so that they sort of get stuck in there. There's not really enough space for them to be in there. So that also really slows things down. And that doesn't happen a lot, but when it does happen, it's really annoying for me to fix because I've got to get in underneath it with tweezers and pull it out. So that's not ideal. I tried to alleviate this problem because I was having this problem a lot before with a slightly older version of this. And I sort of fixed that by making the channel that the string goes through before it gets to the pulley really small, so that the string just goes straight through and then it's lined up really nicely with the pulley. But apparently that hasn't been enough. And if the string gets pushed up the other way, it can still come off the pulley. So I have a solution for this, for both of those problems. And I actually mentioned this in the previous video, which is using belts. I still don't know exactly what this is going to look like, but I'm pretty sure the belts are the answer. I think that they will allow me to solve these two problems that I'm having. And yeah, I think they'll be good. I don't think that they'll be necessary to solve the first problem of the strings not being the same length. I think what I'm planning on doing will work for strings as well as belts, but I think they'll just wear a lot less. They should be smoother, I would imagine, because I've got the nice little pulleys for them to go on. They should stay on their tracks a lot better. The only problem that I haven't overcome with belts is how to pull them all together. So I need 3 belts to go down into one string that can be pulled from any angle and always pull them all like equally. I'm still thinking about this. If you have any thoughts, then definitely let me know. So then the last problem that I can think of for this right now, or the last big one at least, is that I noticed today that when I was doing my testing, the constant force springs sometimes didn't spool up nicely in their little spot that I have for them. And this really caused problems. For one, there was 2 times when they totally just got like mangled up. I don't really know how to describe it, but they really got munched up and they weren't working properly. I'm pretty sure this is being caused by the channel that they're in just not being big enough, and they rub on the printed part and get stuck. So I'm thinking of just changing their position so that they're basically just in free space. I'll probably still have walls beside it to keep it positioned sideways, but maybe that's not even worth it. I'll have to see when I'm testing it out. I don't really know why I didn't do that before. I think it was just because of the way that this bottom piece is shaped. It just worked really nicely to have them there. I could just as easily have rotated them by like 60 degrees and it would have been fine. I don't know why I didn't. There is something else that I think is probably worth talking about now, which is the way that the hand is connected to all of the legs. So what I've got right now is that the legs just go straight up into the hand itself. So what that means is that all of the legs are sort of like leaning in a little bit towards the center. And so this is going to make it a lot more likely for the hand to collide with the legs. And I didn't really think this would be that big of a problem. In my simulations testing it around, it didn't seem too bad, but now just seeing it in person, I think I am going to change it back to the space frame sort of design that I had a little while ago, where the hand is elevated up from the legs and the legs are held out at more of a distance. And that will allow it a much greater range of motion once I'm actually up to the point where I'm integrating the hand and the legs eventually. I also want to change things a bit so that I can remove the hand more easily, so that I can just sort of like, I don't know, do like 3 bolts maybe and just take the whole thing out. Because as it is right now, if I take even a single one of these legs out, it makes the whole thing super unstable. So I have to take out all of the legs and lay them out, and it makes this giant like star thing, and it's really big and annoying to deal with. So yeah, it'd be really good if I could take this out quickly, and that way I can like use it up at my desk and then fix it, and then if it breaks, and put it back down. And so that's what I've been up to for the last week or so. It's been very interesting, and I am excited to start working on the next iteration of the hand. I'm not 100% sure what it's going to look like, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be quite similar to this, but hopefully all of these problems will be fixed and we can finally get first actual throw. Hopefully. Hopefully soon. We will see.